Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me this afternoon as I speak with my good friend and colleague, Stephen McRae, principal dancer with the Royal Ballet. Stephen is one of the Royal Ballet's biggest stars, and as well as a much sought after international guest artist. So I'll just tell you a little bit about Stephen. Along with having danced the major roles in the big classical ballets, he's worked extensively with contemporary choreographers and also creating many roles in some of the ballets that we're going to talk about today. So I'm really excited for our conversation. Just before we get started, a little housekeeping note that we're broadcasting from Toronto and London, England today. So we're doing our best to make sure that the audio and video is as clear as possible, but please bear with us if we have any technical problems, but hopefully that won't happen. So we really appreciate your patience and continued support as we do our best to engage with you from our homes. So I'd like to welcome Stephen here today. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Greta. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's so nice to see you.
You too.
Yeah. So today, Stephen and I are going to be chatting about our company's shared repertoire and what it was like creating some of the roles that no doubt our audience knows well. And then we're going to talk about Stephen's visit to our stage and also the guest artist experience in general, what that's like. We've both had wonderful opportunities to dance around the world. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And also sort of the inevitable discussion of, us being away from the stage now and how we feel about that and maybe what we think is going to happen with the art form moving into the future. So yeah, I'm sort of, I think it's going to be a really fun conversation. So thanks for joining me. Yeah, I thought I'd just start by talking a little bit about our similarities in the company because the National Ballet was, of course, founded by Cylla and at the beginning, we performed mostly English style and English choreographed works because that was Cylla's roots were in the great sort of classical ballets of the British tradition, very similar to the Royal Ballet's founder, Nanette de Valois. So we have very similar roots in that way, but your roots, actually, you're from Australia. So can you tell us a little bit about how you came to the Royal Ballet in the first place?
Yeah. So I grew up in Sydney, Australia, not the glamorous harbour scene that people usually envisage when they think of Australia. I grew up, in the suburbs, and I'm actually from a motorsport family. So the arts were not part of my childhood. It was motorsport and adrenaline seeking. That was my childhood. So I grew up at a racetrack near our house. And my father raced drag racing like insanely fast. And it was incredible because I grew up watching my father follow his passion. He absolutely loved it. And I naturally fell in love with it as well. My sister, my mom, my mom and dad had their honeymoon at a racetrack. So it was, it was a genuine passion of theirs. And I grew up seeing them have an actual passion. And that was, I think, a huge influence on me because then when I was introduced to dance through my sister, they just totally supported that. They saw how much I loved it and that I became, from this shy little boy hiding behind my mom, I turned into this like wild lion or tiger for an hour every week when I went into the studio. And they could see that I obviously had a passion and they obviously knew what a passion felt like. And they supported that in any way that they could. We were not financially the most well-off family on the planet, but they were there for me emotionally. They never once said, "Oh no, you shouldn't do that." It was just constantly, looking at me and thinking, actually, he looks like he's thriving and he's developing as a human. So that was my very odd route into the world of ballet. So, and even ballet as a whole didn't really have an influence on my life until, I was a mid-teenager, really. because I didn't know anything about it. I'd never seen a ballet performance. I'd never even had the discussion that you could actually have a career and you could be a dancer, professionally. Right. I didn't know that existed, of course. Right. So actually until I joined the Royal Ballet and I was on stage holding a tray of cups in Sleeping Beauty with Darcy Bustle doing Aurora that I actually saw the first time.
Right. So you didn't really grow up thinking, I want to be with the Royal Ballet. I want to be necessarily. It wasn't that. It was really your passion for dance.
Yeah, I just loved to dance. And in Australia, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but Australia loves a competition. They have a competition for everything. So, I was at dance competitions almost every weekend. And, I see both sides, the good and the bad of doing competitions. But for myself, a young kid that just wanted to be on stage, those competitions were so valuable for me because I was out every weekend doing a different competition, learning a solo really quickly that week with my teacher and, just learning how to try and hold on to an audience no matter where you were, whether it was a tiny school hall or a big theater or, and it was jazz, it was tap, it was everything. And you learned very quickly that, 1 week you're the favorite and you win everything. And then the next week, oh, you're not the favorite anymore. There's someone else and they win. And then like 2 weeks later, oh, you win again. And actually, when I look back at it, it set me up very well for the professional world because we know that, sometimes you think, oh, actually, it's going quite well. And I seem to be cast in the opening night all the time and I'm doing great things. I'm dancing with great ballerinas. And then you go through a bit of a quieter patch and maybe you think, okay, it's sort of tapered off a bit and then it comes in again. And, it goes in waves. And that is genuinely what the career is like. So my childhood, although not conventionally, the traditional route into what people think a ballet company is, I think it did set me up quite nicely for the professional world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that you are most known for is your charisma and your acting ability on stage and your ability to tell a story. Obviously your
ability to grow facial hair.
Obviously you're extraordinary, as a technical dancer, but I think that's also a kind of similarity with our two companies is like I think it's really important that the artists in the company are able to tell the stories and really embody characters. And that's so important, for classical ballet, right? Yeah,
well, especially these days where obviously, with Instagram and social media, anybody can look like the next rock star of the ballet world because, you can record yourself all day long and then you happen to do one good pirouette and then you put that on Instagram and that's what everybody sees and everyone thinks, wow, this person's absolutely phenomenal. But doing that one pirouette when you've had 50 chances during the day to do it and actually stepping on stage and carrying a whole performance and making that audience transform and become transfixed in what they're watching, that is a completely different skill. And I think that is what takes an entire career to really build and develop. You can't just put that on Instagram.
No, it's true. It's true. It's a process. It's absolutely a process. Also something you mentioned about sort of growing up, you did all different styles as well of dance.
Yeah.
Tap, jazz, ballet, I think we all started like that anyway. It wasn't just ballet for myself as well, it's nice to see that you're able to use a lot of those skills throughout your entire career. especially, we can start talking a little bit about things like Alice in Wonderland, because that's a ballet that we both, we were collaborators on that, the National Ballet and the Royal Ballet. So I think maybe we can talk a little bit about working with, developing that ballet, creating that role. I think one of the most exciting and the most fulfilling times in my career is when I've been able to create roles with a choreographer. And that's such a different experience than learning a role and, even learning iconic roles that, famous ballerinas and famous dancers have created. It's just such a different process, and I worked with Christopher Wren one time before Alice. We did his Polyphonia. at the
Okay,
National Ballet.
yeah.
So that was,
The nice
that was our,
challenge.
that was our first sort of, that was my first time working with him in the studio, and the first ballet we did of his. And then when we did Alice, he created it for you guys at the Royal Ballet, and then came over and worked with us before the North American premiere. And I remember we had all seen it on video before, thinking that it must have been the way that ballet evolved must have been very much, you must have put a lot of yourself into it. Like, I feel like the characters that he created it on were so evident in what ended up, what the ballet ended up being, like, I mean, for my role as the Red Queen, obviously Zenaida is larger than life and so fantastic. And, it's hard not to be influenced by that when you're learning the role. But how did that happen for you? Like, was it your idea to do tap, or did that come out of Chris's idea? No.
I've had really, incredible and fortunate journey with Christopher Wren. He actually created one of the very first big opportunities I got on the Royal Opera House stage. I was, I don't know, must have been 19 years old or something like that. And we did a ballet called Homage to the Queen. And, it was actually an older ballet that obviously was done for the Queen. And they revived it and did a new version of it. So they got some, a bunch of choreographers to re-choreograph different things. So I was cast by Wren to be the spirit of fire. It was all the different elements. And he created this most insane, technically virtuoso demanding role from age 19, where I literally just myself around the stage, like a madman.
Yeah.
And that was a really huge moment for me, because he didn't have to choose me. I was incredibly young and, inexperienced, but he did. He created this insane role on me, and I was very fortunate because I got a chance to show myself a bit more than in the roles that I'd been doing up until that point. I'd been in the company for a year or half a year or something. So, and then over the years, I was in a number of his ballets, second cast to other principals and things like that. So in the studio a lot with him, working. And when they announced that they were going to do a new production of Alice, he just one day walked past me and said, "Oh, I think you're going to be the Mad Hatter, and I want to try something. So could you bring your tap shoes with you for the first rehearsal? I don't know where this is going. Let's just see." He obviously knew I could tap. I basically got into the Royal Ballet School and the Royal Ballet Company because of this tap solo I did at the Prix de Lausanne. If I didn't do that, basically, I probably wouldn't have had the career that I'm having. And, I've done a few little galas and things like that where he'd obviously seen me do a little bit of tap. So, I knew he'd worked with Joby on the music, on the score. And, I think Joby's a genius and insanely musical and creates these really cool tunes. So I was excited for that first rehearsal just to see, okay, what's going to happen here? And it was, I have to say, it was the most incredible experience, because as a child, obviously, you try everything. And I think good dance teachers around the world will tell you that you can't just do ballet. You have to have a well-rounded dance education. You don't go to high school and just do maths. You still have to have a rounded education. So I think for the day that I started creating Hatter, it was a real, culmination of all these different things I'd learned as a kid. And it just meant that I had a huge bag of tools to just sort of throw into it and see what came out of it. And it was fascinating because Wren had obviously a very clear idea of what it is that he wanted. And he would basically illustrate that to me and say, can we kind of do this and this and this, but I want a rhythm that is sort of boom. And then I would sort of do it with my feet and he'd go, yeah, or no, a bit less, or actually I want more of an emphasis here. And that was a whole new way of working for me because, growing up, I always had my tap teacher who basically would demonstrate and then you would try and copy. Whereas this was a very different way. Obviously, Chris didn't demonstrate step by step what he wanted, but he would sing rhythms at me or, or he'd say, okay, I want this step to look like you're doing like a Tonvegan attitude, but it's got to be tapped or, something like that. And I loved it because...
Well, it must have been so much fun.
yeah, it's such a great challenge. And when you work with people like that, and Wayne McGregor's another one, they challenge you in a very different way. Wayne worked in a completely different way to what Wilden does, but I love, as you said, I love that process of having an input and creating something literally from scratch. It's it's a blank canvas, and of course the choreographer has very clear ideas of what it is that they're trying to achieve as a big picture, but I think a lot of them don't come into the studio knowing actually every step that they want to do. They want the dancer there to be part of it so that they actually have input as well. At least from my experience, that's been the most enjoyable process, when you're not dictated to, you're actually part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that it really does become yours. It's nice when the choreographer almost hands it over to you. They give you this guide, but then in the end, it's like you are co-creators. I mean, it's really nice.
Yeah,
it's a nice experience.
Unfortunately, I have a tendency to sort of just get lost in performances, and I have been known to suddenly just change choreography.
Improv,
and it's never ever intentional. Like, I would never ever be disrespectful to a choreographer, but you know what it's like. It's live theater, and sometimes it's so hard to not just let yourself go with it. It's so hard to stay, so strict to the point that you think, well, actually, I really felt like I just wanted to go here with that, or add an extra turn in, or do something there, or so I find when you have the role created on you, you almost have a bit more license to do that.
Absolutely. And I think when it's in the spirit, and when it's in the right attitude and vein of the character, it's not going to upset the choreographer that you added a flourish, or you took the step a little bit further that night. Like, that's what, again, live performance, right? It makes it exciting.
And same with you were obviously the original when they did it in Canada, and I know it was created on Zenaida, but Chris obviously taught it to you guys, but then also adapted and evolved the ballet with you guys. And when it came back to us, we were then learned, oh, he's evolved this bit now and evolved that. And of course, at first you go, hang on, it was created on me.
That's right.
No, it wasn't like that. But of course, it's a living piece of art. So the joy with having these collaborations between the two companies is that it never becomes stagnant. It's constantly adding, like an onion, I guess, like another layer to that production, which it's brilliant.
And then other dancers maybe add something. The choreographer goes, oh, that's really cool. Let's add that.
Yeah.
And, little things.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And then you did the role Here With Us, which I'm sure a lot of people watching will remember. There you are.
That was so much fun.
That was really fun. And, you that was, I think, your first time guesting with us, right? Was when you did Mad Hatter.
Yeah, I'd be lucky to come over twice. The two companies have such a wonderful relationship. So it was basically like an exchange sort of thing. And I have to say, I felt genuinely at home when I was over in Canada.
Oh, that's so nice.
I could easily have, split my time there and stayed over there, because it, I think the work ethic and just the mentality of a lot of the dancers, I felt, it was parallel to what I'm used to. Obviously, the work schedule is different, is in you have your performance blocks and your rehearsal blocks. And that was something that was very new to me. I couldn't understand that, to be honest, because I'm just so used to performing and rehearsing all at the same time. Like, there's no sort of downtime.
Because at the Royal Ballet, you have performances, and you're in the opera house all the time, unlike us, right?
Yeah.
So you're going in and out. Yeah.
Yes, we have like a 5 or 6 week period at the beginning of the season to build up and try and, get ahead on the first 2 or 3 ballets of the season. And then once the first performance starts, that's it. You perform from, the end of September through till July.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, many European companies are like that as well, where they sort of have a block. I know the Bolshoi's like that too, a block of time at the beginning. You get like all the ballets for the year ready, and then you just go kind of, it's a very different mentality. But then you also came and you did Nutcracker with us, James Kadelka's Nutcracker.
Yeah, that's when finally dance with you.
Yes, that was super fun. And I think that I mean, we only had, there we are. We only had like a couple of
Oh,
days, I think, to get that together. I think we didn't have much time
yeah.
to prepare, if
Well,
you
I mean, I
remember.
have to say, dancing with you is
Oh,
like a piece of cake. I mean, it
oh,
was the pas de deux
hey.
were the rest moments. I have to say, every time you stepped on stage, I went, okay, I can relax now.
Yeah, well, it's not an easy production. I mean, I know that Johan Coburg also guested and Nutcracker with us as well, and he was saying, I mean, it's a very, very difficult role for the male dancer, for the male
Yeah,
lead. You know, it's incredible, and I know he was saying, oh, this is one of the most amazing productions of Nutcracker, because generally the prince comes on and does a couple of pas de deux and, you know, that, and a variation and the coda, and that's it, you know, where you're on stage the entire time telling this extraordinary
exactly.
story. How did you find that experience? And
Well, I have to say, you know, when Karen said, "Oh, would you come over and do it?" I was obviously thrilled and said yes straight away. I literally
yeah,
just said yes, and I didn't even know anything about the production. And then
hadn't seen
obviously,
it
you
yet.
know, a few weeks before flying over, because you know, as an exchange thing, it was literally like, okay, like you just go do your show and come back. Um, and I think I got the video like a few weeks before, and I thought, okay, I'll just have a little look and watch it. And you know, in our production in London, the prince just comes on in Act 2 and does the grand pas de deux, solo coda, the end,
Basta.
and the other role for the male is the nephew, and he does all the dancing in Act 1, and then does like the diverts and all that in Act 2. So when I was younger, I did the nephew role, so you know, I was very familiar with, you know, that side of the ballet, and then I've done the prince now for, you know, I don't know, feels like 100 years. And so I had experience doing both, and obviously all the diverts when I was in the quarter ballet and stuff. But when I got the video and I sat down to watch, and I thought, okay, so it'll be a nice long overture. Let's see what happens. And no, the curtain goes up, and what used to be in the overture was literally the role I'm doing straight
Yeah,
away.
you're right in there, right at the beginning.
I was in shock. I thought, oh my goodness. But actually, I had my colleague at the Royal Ballet, Nehemiah Quiche, had obviously
Yep,
done the role, and
yep.
he warned me. He said, you know, really make sure you learn it. It's quite a challenge. It's, you know, quite a stamina thing. You're in this huge woolly costume. You'll be sweating. And I thought, it's fine. Like, I've done so many hard roles. Like, I know it's going to be a challenge, but it's fine. And yeah, everybody was completely correct. It was such a challenge.
So hard, right?
And
Yeah.
you know, it was a thrill for me though, because it was completely different to the production that I was used to, and you really did feel like you were part of the company then, rather than just flying in, doing your thing and leaving. You know, I got to interact with everybody. I was there,
And the
obviously, with
kids, all the little
cool
kids,
kids,
and
and
yeah.
you know, I was literally whispering to them like, "What's next?" You know, they would tell me, of course.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing. It's the same here in London as well. They're so well rehearsed, and it was great because then I genuinely got to be part of the company, and then, you know, obviously dancing with you, who's literally one of the jewels of their company. So
Thank you.
it just made it that extra bit special, you know.
It was really fun, I have to say. That was a really fun time. But that's kind of the experience usually of a guest artist, is you do fly in, you do your 2 rehearsals or whatever it is, and or you're learning a new production for a few days, you're dancing with someone you've never danced before, and you fly out. You know, it's not usual that, you know, you get to sort of feel like you're a part of a company, and you know, we don't usually get that kind of time as a guest artist. And I mean, I don't know how you feel about it. I always feel a little bit like, you know, because also people are watching you, all eyes on you. You're the new, you know, you're the guest, and, you know, what's he going to do?
Show us what you can do.
That's right. That's right. And I always did feel, you know, when I was at the Royal Ballet as well years ago, dancing there, I always felt like it was less like that with our company, between our companies. And I liked that. And as sort of, it's thrilling and exciting, obviously, to be in a new place and working with new people and be the guest. And you do learn a lot. But I don't know how you find that. Like, how do you find that experience?
It's all very dependent, you know, and each company has a very different feel and a different vibe. You know, I've had wonderful experiences doing it, and I've also learned over the years as well, flying all the way to Australia and then getting off a plane and dancing and then realizing that was not a good idea.
Yeah.
But you're young.
Lesson learned there, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then over the years, I've also learned, if you are going to be in that scenario, better to fly with somebody from your company that you can at least prepare with, so that then you get there and it's not such a huge shock. I had quite a few years with Iana Selenko coming to the Royal Ballet to dance. And that was an incredible time, and I absolutely love dancing with her. Great artist. And once I'm back on stage, hopefully that will all kick off again as well. But she was basically doing what we were talking about. She would fly into London the day before our show, and we would sort of talk through it all. Okay, what ballet are we doing here? Okay, it's Don Q. Okay, just focus on Act 1. We'll talk about Act 2 in the interval. And you're on stage, and she's bourraying forward, and you go, okay, go to the left, go to the left. That kind of scenario. But I think when you can do that regularly with one person, it wasn't so stressful anymore. Because
there's a trust there. I think that
exactly. It's like this inbuilt thing that it either happens or it doesn't. And I've worked with some people for years and years and years, and it's nice, but that real bond just really ever happen. And then other people you dance with once and you go, oh, that just felt normal. That just felt how it should feel.
Right.
Just human nature, I think. That's relationships in general. We can't all, be best friends with everybody. And it's the same with partnerships as well. Sometimes you can't even look at it like a textbook and say, oh, their heights and their style and their temperament, that'll work. Because that doesn't even always happen. Sometimes I'm somebody that you think that's never going to happen. And then it happens and you think, wow, okay, somebody saw something there that I genuinely didn't see.
Yes, exactly. No, for sure. I want to talk a little bit about that kind of chemistry. And also, you brought up Wayne a while back, and we're in the fall of 2021. The National Ballet is set to premiere a new work by Wayne, inspired by Margaret Atwood's novel, Mad Adam. Yeah. And we worked with Wayne. We did Chroma here, and I know you created a role in that ballet. And I worked with him with Chroma and in Genus. We did Genus as well.
Oh, yes.
He is extraordinary to work with, and such a unique artist. I haven't had the experience of actually creating with him like you have. So I would love to hear a little bit about that from you. And also, I hope one day to be able to create with him, but he is somebody that is so special. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that, working with him, and like what you think as a contemporary choreographer, what sort of play he has in the development of classical ballet, because he's really pushed the envelope. Like with Chroma, it was like when that premiered, it was like no one really had ever seen anything like that. It was really incredible. So, yeah.
Yeah. So Wayne, I have to say, is I feel like he has this sort of supernatural aura about him, which sounds, probably really weird to say. But I absolutely love the fact that every time I walk into the studio with him, I'm challenged, not just physically, but mentally as well.
Yes.
I at school, I loved academics. I was, probably a geek, you'd say. But I loved maths and Latin and all that sort of stuff. And I feel like when you work with him, you really tap into that side of the brain. He works in a way that is not the usual, like, oh, just do a tombe pas de bourrée, or can you just do like a pirouette here or this or this. He uses like a very different vocabulary, but then obviously throws in these balletic terms and suddenly goes, do an arabesque, and you go, where did that come from? Okay, I didn't expect to have that terminology, which obviously he's developed that over the years as well. But what I also admire about Wayne is that he's so professional that if he has like an hour rehearsal allocated to create something, if he has got what he wants after 40 minutes and he's happy with what he wanted to achieve on that particular day, he says, we're done. Thank you. See you tomorrow. And I really admire that, because in a company like ours that, we're performing all the time and you're working on anywhere from 3 to 9 different ballets at the same time, I really respect that, because that shows respect towards the dancer as well. He won't just repeat and repeat and repeat for the sake of it. He does it to achieve the best result. He gets it, then he moves on to the next thing. And I really admire that from the dancer side of things. I also admire his incredible ability to collaborate with people. He's not afraid.
In all different, and not just art, not just dancers, like in all across the board. So incredible.
And he's not afraid to bring people in and to just have people sort of question things or say, oh, like, what's going on here? Or why don't we do this? And he goes, oh, okay. So there's a new element. He'll work out how to use that, rather than just, no, that's not my idea. And I really value that, obviously, as an artist myself. And, he's also just so professional that he can work. And, even if he has to like kick and scream a little bit during the rehearsal, when the rehearsal's finished, it's all done. And see him in the corridor and, hi, Stephen, how are you? It's fine.
Yeah.
One day I was complaining about the lights on stage or something, because, I always feel blind on stage. I can't see anything. He was like, stop complaining about the lights. And, I felt awful that I had, made him raise his voice. And, 50 minutes later, he's just talking to you like normal. It's like nothing ever happened. He's there to try and achieve the best possible result he can achieve, and ultimately that's what I'm trying to do as well. And I think there's a mutual understanding there that's what we're all trying to do, really. We're so looking forward to having him, and I'm excited to even see him and witness some of the creative process, because we've learned the ballets, but we haven't had a chance to actually be in the studio and watch his process. So we're really excited about that. It's the speed that he works at that I also adore.
Yes, me too.
There's no time to shut off. It's go. I remember even when we were creating Chroma, so that, I was, must have been 19 or something then as well when that was created. And the intensity of these rehearsals, it was like the room was pumping and pumping and pumping. And I can still remember the first day that we put it all together for the first time in the studio. And none of us had really seen what each other were doing. Yeah. And I can remember just number after number looking around the room, and everyone's just looking at each other going, oh my God, I think we're actually part of something really special here. Like, this is not just another ballet here.
Right.
Like,
you can tell those moments when something extraordinary is happening in the studio, and you know it's going to be. I mean, we had that with James Kadelka's Four Seasons when he was creating that. We did finish the run through, and we were like, what just happened?
Yeah,
something really extraordinary just happened. The energy in the room is so intense. So I'm really excited about that. But
exciting for the company to have that moment.
Yes, and exciting to get back on stage. So we have only a few minutes left, but I do want to touch on sort of how we're coping and what we think maybe is going to be like to be on stage after this break. I mean, I know we both have families. You have 3 young children. I think your youngest is like 9 months, which is a huge handful. Oh my God, it's so crazy to think about it. And I think it's this sort of forced isolation has been a little bit of a blessing for me, mainly because I think I wouldn't have been able to spend so much time with my kids then if this hadn't happened. But of course, we all want to get back to work and back on stage. And what do you think? What do you think will change for you as a performer coming back? Because when you're injured and you're off, it's like you're the only one that's off, and everybody else continues on. But this has been like the entire world is in the same boat. We're all being forced into this situation. So what do you think? Like, how do you think that's going to feel, and what do you think we're performing will look like when we come back? It's hard to predict, I guess.
Yeah,
but...
it is hard to predict. I think For me, it's about really taking a moment to stop and listen more to the audience. I love creating things and being part of incredible art that's being created, but I also think at times a lot of the artwork becomes so self-indulgent that at times we've forgotten about our audience. Mm-hmm. And ultimately the audience is there because they want to be entertained, they want to feel something, they want to be transformed for a few hours. And I think hopefully the initial period will obviously require us to perform a lot of the big ballets, a lot of the probably more well-known titles. And a lot of those ballets really do connect with the audience in a pure entertainment style. Mm-hmm. And I hope that it'll just re-spark people's desire to connect with the audience and continue to find new ways to connect with them. Of course, creating new artwork, but not forgetting about the audience. Yes. I think that's for me so vital. I would hate to step on stage and finish the ballet, take a bow, and think the audience didn't really get anything from that. They're sat there going, "What did I just watch?" Mm-hmm. And I want them to go out feeling transfixed or inspired. I don't want them to walk out thinking, "Oh, I want to be a ballet dancer," because that's just not realistic. But I want them to walk out of those performances and think, "My God, like we need these arts in our life more than ever." And hopefully when the shows do start up again, that will just reinforce to the world just how incredibly important the arts are.
Absolutely. I think that that sort of human connection and the live connection of being on stage it's not something that you get from watching something on video or online, which is what we're all now getting used to seeing. But I mean, I think there already is like such a hunger to be like experiencing something live, and especially dance, because it's so visceral, like you just feel it, emanating from the stage. So I totally agree with you. I think that's going to be something that we're all going to need and want. And I hope that when we're back on stage, the audience feels that and is going to just continue to come back and support us. So
definitely.
Yeah. So on that note, I want to thank all of the community of ballet supporters that were here with us today, and the audience's support of the dancers in this crisis and at all times is so incredibly meaningful to us on both sides of the ocean, as Definitely. We know. So. Yeah, so whether they're engaging with online content or buying tickets and subscriptions for next year, we are so grateful for the outpouring of support. So thank you so much to them. I want to thank my good friend Stephen for joining us today. Such a fun conversation. And I mean, we could go on, you and I could go on talking forever. Yeah. And we could do, I'd love to do another one of these and, pick your brain some more. But I think that we all learned a lot about our respective companies, as well as just a lot about you and the extraordinary artist that you are. So thank you for letting us into your experiences and your life a little bit. I want to thank you for that. Yeah. So thank you so much for being here. And thanks to all who joined us today.
A pleasure. Keep up, everyone, and keep safe.
Okay. See you soon.